But I'm not surprised that countries in Asia, Middle East, are now going back to silver. Yes, it was back in July this year that the Indian government, their central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, announced that from April next year, people are going to be able, not just companies, but people like us, but in India, they're going to be able to use their silver to collateralize loans that they're going to take out. So basically, India is saying, well, we accept silver as money again, and I think that's huge. And I think India has kind of triggered an awakening in silver. Thursday, November 13th, 2025, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, we're going to look at silver today. I think silver is going to get very expensive. Yes, a lot of people say that silver is going to catch up to gold when the public realizes there's a bull market in precious metals, and they'll go for the poor man's gold, right? Silver. But I'm here to tell you that I think it could be very different. Yes, and we're going to look at the information that I'm getting from very reliable sources that central banks are actually very active in silver as well, which is very surprising. Up until recently, I think the only country that was adding silver reserves was Russia. They announced it last year that they're going to be buying silver and I think platinum as well. And many people that have said that the gold-silver ratio will never go back down to like 15-1 or even lower. They've said that the reason for that is that central banks buy gold as a monetary reserve asset. But I think that is changing. And I think for us retail investors or stackers, it's going to get very expensive very soon. And I think, of course, the price of silver is telling us that that huge mother of all teacup and handles from 1980 till now is ready to surge and break out. And I think, yeah, below $50 silver will be history, will be something that we will look back and say, well, I should have bought a lot more silver. And with that, I wanted to give a shout out to my precious metals dealers, affiliates. In the UK, it's Gold Investments. They've been in business for like 44 years. I've dealt with them personally since 2002. And you can find all their details below in the description. There's some promo codes you can use when dealing with them. I recommend you give them a call on the phone or contact them by email, or just go on their website as well if you want. And you can even go there personally and meet Oliver Temple and Simon Temple. In the US, my affiliate is Miles Franklin. And I have a link to a landing page in the description as well. And Andy Schechtman always says that the best way to get in touch is to give him a call on the toll-free number. So, yes, I'm going to talk about what's happening in silver right now. And later on, I want to talk about government. The size of government, not just here in the UK, but throughout the West. We're going to cover the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia. Yes, something needs to happen, in my opinion, for our economies to have some kind of renaissance. And I'm going to also recommend a book that I think is one of the most important books that we should read, especially in these turbulent economic, political, and monetary times, a period where government has become so huge, and government and world government is trying to become so authoritarian. So back to silver. I have to admit, up until recently, I didn't think that governments and central banks would want to use silver again as a reserve asset. We have to go back to like the 1870s for really the death of silver as a monetary reserve asset, as money as well. It's been very gradual, of course, but back in the 1870s, you had the great crime of 1873 when the U.S. demonetized silver. Yes, it was still used as money, as coinage, up until 1964, but it wasn't really legal tender. People could refuse if you wanted to pay a big amount with silver. Gold was the U.S. went off a bimetallic standard, and I don't think that was the intent of the Constitution. You can still read it, and it says gold and silver will be coined as money. So that was the great crime of 1873. The other thing that I've heard from people that I know, like the Nome of Zurich, he knows the history as well. He said that after 1871, the Germans, when they defeated the French in the Franco-Prussian War, they were flush with a lot of silver. And the bankers in Frankfurt recommended that the government sell their silver, and that didn't help either. And also during the Great Depression, I've read that the UK, for example, pushed in the Indian people, or the Indian bureaucracy that they ran at the time, to just hoard a lot of silver. Yeah, silver was kept down for over a century. It was only in the 70s that we saw silver pick up again and actually go to 50 with the Hunt brothers cornering the market towards the end of that decade. But there's also stories that I've read that the Hunt brothers got together with a lot of wealthy sheikhs from the Middle East, and that there was a plan for Texas to secede from the Union, from the United States, and use silver as a new currency. Did you know that Texas is the only state of the Union that became a state through an international treaty? Yeah, Texas was a republic for a while, and then through the Treaty of Hidalgo became a state. And that treaty is renewed every year, I think, on the 1st of January or 31st of December. It's something done automatic. So I'm not surprised then. Yes, I didn't think it would happen, but I'm not surprised that countries in Asia, Middle East, are now going back to silver. Yes, it was back in July this year that the Indian government, their central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, announced that from April next year, people are going to be able, not just companies, but people like us, but in India, they're going to be able to use their silver to collateralize loans that they're going to take out. So basically, India is saying, well, we accept silver as money again, and I think that's huge. And I think India has kind of triggered an awakening in silver. And of course, there isn't a World Silver Council like the World Gold Council that reports how central banks buy gold. Well, when they report to the World Gold Council, right, every month. So when this is going to come out, I don't know. But I'm hearing from people that I know very well, that I've worked with, that I trust, that now, aside from buying a lot of gold in this correction we saw start back in the middle of October, they're buying silver. And when my friend told me that, I was really shocked that they're buying silver in bulk as well. Not just the Gulf cooperation countries in the Middle East, but also countries like Korea, South Korea. So I think this is huge. And if you haven't started buying silver and you're waiting for it to go back to 30 or 40, I think you will be disappointed. I'm not telling you to do it. This is just my opinion. Yes, silver is very bulky, so the other way to have exposure to silver is through mining companies, silver mining companies, and there aren't that many out there. You should do your research. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to give you the bigger picture, but I will tell you some of the miners that I have. And again, this is not like telling you to buy it, but one of them is Vizsla Silver Corp. The other one is Pan American Silver, and the other one is Avino Silver, which Eric Young told me about when it was trading below a dollar. And I've done very well from this stock, and right now it's almost at $5, but there's a lot of room, I think. So yes, I still am trying to get as much physical silver as well. I think that's paramount that you have it too. But if you have millions of dollars to invest, maybe the miners could be a way to make it easier. But there's people like David Bateman, the tech billionaire, who actually I follow on X, and he follows me as well. He's bought hundreds of millions of physical silver through the exchanges, and they're storing it for him. So yes, silver is gonna shock the world, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that because I want the price to go higher and I want to make money, because actually that's what it's all about. Silver is money, right? And I've spoken about this many times here on the channel, that yeah, the word for money in many countries, and even for bank, for a bank, I think in Chinese it means the silver bank. The word for bank is kind of like silver. In France, when you talk about money, argent, well, that means silver. Or in Spanish, plata, that means silver and money. The name for the American currency, the dollar, comes from the thaler, which was a coin that became very famous in Europe in the 1600s or 16th century. Joachim's thaler in Bohemia, a man that used to mint silver coins. And here's an example of a Maria Theresa thaler, and the word dollar comes from thaler. So there it is. I mean, so it's part of the monetary history of the world. In the last 60 years or so, since we've had, let's say, silver in the US coinage, and also a lot of the European coinage lost to silver in the 60s and early 70s. This has been an aberration. So I think it's great that silver will come back, in my opinion. I think India and BRICS, they're the ones that have triggered this. And when the Hunt brothers tried to do it, and John Connolly as well, who was Secretary of the Treasury under Nixon in the early 70s, and was also in the limo with Kennedy when he got shot, he was involved with the Hunt brothers, and they were going to set something up. And a lot of Arab sheikhs, and there's even talk that the Shah of Iran was involved. but they were put down very easily. But now you've got the whole of BRICS, you've got China, Russia, India, and all of these powerful countries in the Middle East going at it together. There's no way this is going to be able to be stopped like they stopped the Hunt brothers. And that's why I think this teacup and handle chart, which we're breaking out right now, because as I speak here, it's 7:45 a.m. London time, silver's back above $54. And back in October, the all-time high was 54.62. So keep an eye on that level today. So far, overnight, the high's been 54.33. Gold is doing well as well. We're back above 4,200. As I've said a few times in the last few weeks, this correction will be over when we make new highs. That's the only way. And we're not out of the woods yet. We could see some kind of short-term correction in the next week or two. But the market seems very strong. And why do I think this is happening? Well, there's one thing that any U.S. administration and any kind of Congress, whether it's controlled by the Democrats or Republicans, there's one thing they always agree on, and that's more spending, right? They might put the country through shutdown or debt ceiling and some brinksmanship and crisis, but at the end of the day, they always come together and they give in to more spending, and that's what it's all about. I mean, I'm hearing that Trump is going to send $2,000 checks. I don't know to how many people, but where's that money coming from? Well, it's coming from the tariff tax. Yes, it's a tax. It's not Chinese companies paying the tariff. It's U.S. companies that import goods from abroad. They pay the tariff, and eventually they'll pass that cost on to the consumer, American consumer, and who receives the tariffs from the importer. Well, it's the U.S. Treasury. So by sending this check to people, it's not really from other countries. It's like they're taxing the American people, and it's a gimmick. They're saying, "Oh, we're giving you 2,000," but they've taken already 2,000 from you through tariffs and through higher prices. So that's what's going on, and I think that's why we're going to continue to see the dollar go down. Not just the dollar, but also all of the fiat currencies. Governments keep spending, and someone sent me this chart here of global M2. And it's not just the U.S. that's growing M2 money supply, but also China and the EU. There's no stopping these people. So I said I wanted to talk about government. Yeah, we just saw GDP in the UK come out today. And the FT says UK economy unexpectedly contracted by 0.1% in September. Well, to me and you, I don't think it's unexpected, because we know that big government, increasing government spending, yes, it kills the private economy. And that's why we're in such a state, not just in the UK, but in the US, in Canada, Australia, and the rest of Western Europe. And I'm going to just show you a few charts here and some data. So from Trading Economics, which I subscribe to, you've got UK public sector total spending to GDP, government spending, of course. And if you look at prior to World War I, it was fairly high. It was above 10%, but it never really went above 15%. And then, of course, World War I and World War II, it spiked. But you would have thought that over the decades after World War II, we'd go back to the relatively small government we had prior to World War I, but we didn't. We are actually spending government spending is almost as high as it was at the height of World War I, as you can look through this chart. So that's the whole problem with our economies. That's why governments are so intrusive, and that's why the debt is getting out of control. The U.S. is even more pronounced, even though the U.S. is spending less than the U.K. U.S. is up to like 39.7% of GDP, the latest figure. But if you look at prior to World War I, it was below 10%. In 1907, it was only 6.5%. And again, World War I and World War II changed everything. And also, I would say the New Deal and the Great Depression, you can see here, that got government a lot more involved. And the same thing for Australia, even though the data only go back to 71. Back then it was 18% of GDP. Now Australia is at 26.5%, which is actually pretty good in Western standards. I couldn't find this chart for Canada, but I found some data for Canada. So go back to 1870 when Canada was created as a state. It was below 5% government spending to GDP. It did go up a bit after 1910 to 10.45. That's because of World War I probably. And then it went back down in 1930 to 7.72%. But if we look at presently, Canada is spending more than 50% of GDP, debt to GDP, government spending. Up until up until 1960, it was only at 15%. So it was the 70s that brought in this big government, as you can see. So the book is The Law by Frederick Bastiat, and it's all about government plundering or legal plunder of our money and our resources, and lumbering us, our children and grandchildren, with debt. It says here on the back of the book, the law created order in my thinking about liberty and just human conduct. That was Walter Williams. What does it say about Frederick Bastiat? Well, he was a statesman, essayist, and economist. Frederick Bastiat was a renowned champion of individual freedom and the law. First published in 1850 is Bastiat's most famous and enduring work. The Law has been acclaimed for more than a century as the classic moral defense of liberty and limited government. Here is a timeless message of immutable principle in the immortal words of one of history's most courageous thinkers and brilliant writers, Joseph Schumpeter. He said, the most brilliant economic journalist who ever lived. Václav Klaus, former Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, said, a great prophet of liberty, the free society, and the free market. Well, we don't have any of that, unfortunately. And this is an interesting thing that Bastiat said, and I quote, the state is that great fiction by which everyone tries to live at the expense of everyone else. Reminds me of this $2,000 check, right? Someone had to pay that to the Treasury, and now the Treasury is giving it to someone else. So that's what's going on. I'm going to put a link to this book in the description. It's free. The link, it's from the Mises Institute, the Austrian School of Economics. You might want to go onto their website, Mises.org, and buy the book as well. I think it's a great book to have, and tell friends, families, and colleagues about it. I think people need to learn about this, that there is another way of running our affairs, that we should be in charge as individuals, not the state. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.